what does it really take, to achieve an extraordinary impact? I mean, beyond just doing your job well or even doing it excellently, how do some people truly shape outcomes, leave that indelible mark, become like the driving force everyone talks about?
That's a really powerful question because it gets at something more than just ambition or sheer hard work. It points to a very specific blend of vision, but also meticulous preparation. And maybe crucially, an almost intuitive grasp of how the world operates, knowing exactly when to make your move.
That's a great way to put it, a powerful framework. Welcome everyone to the Deep Dive. Today we're exploring exactly that, what it takes to be not just, a participant, but a genuine force. What the fascinating text we're looking at calls the player. And I'm genuinely excited to unpack the core concepts for you because some of these examples are really eye-opening. They illustrate the kind of nuanced strategies behind truly significant success. We'll explore what it means to be the player and how things like opportunity, timing, and just relentless preparation, how they all converge.
Yeah, our mission today is really to distill the most important nuggets from this source material. Help you understand the blueprint, maybe, of extraordinary impact. We're going to look at some surprising examples, some practical insights, too, that show how these elements actually come together.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start with a foundational concept then, because the text makes this really crucial distinction right off the bat. The difference between a player and the player.
Correct.
Think about, say, college graduation. You're there, cap and gown. You met all the requirements. Maybe you aced your courses, got the degree. You absolutely were a player in that academic game.
For sure, you participated. You succeeded by the defined rules.
Exactly. Maybe you were even valedictorian, destined for leadership in your field. But did you fundamentally alter the academic landscape of the university itself? Did you cultivate a devoted following, a real movement?
Probably not, in most cases.
Probably not.
And this is where that deeper insight comes in. Moving beyond just, let's say, achieving your stated goals, the player operates on an entirely different level, a different level of influence and execution. The text uses this, almost cinematic example to really drive this home. El Chapo's infamous jail escape.
That story is certainly something. What stands out most to you about it in this context?
Well, think about the elements. People risking their lives for him, digging across city tunnel.
Undetected.
Completely undetected, right to his cell. They apparently wired it with streetlights, had a fueled motorbike waiting at the end.
It's incredible, especially when you consider national security was supposedly on high alert, yet nobody knew this huge, time-consuming project was happening.
It's astonishing, yeah. And it undeniably illustrates this sheer force of influence and meticulous planning. But what's crucial to grasp here, I think, is that while the context is extreme, the principles are what we're looking at. Cultivating that level of unwavering loyalty, orchestrating incredibly complex logistics, these are the principles we can extract for any high-stakes environment. Yeah. The player has loyalists at every level, a clear plan, the resources needed, and they execute it successfully. It's about having that kind of operational command, that dedication.
So how does the text bridge that gap then? How do these principles, orchestrating deep loyalty, unseen operations, how does that apply in, say, the business world? Boardrooms are full of players, right? All engaged in strategies for profitability.
Oh, absolutely. In the corporate sphere, a player might be a brilliant executive. Maybe they achieve great things for the company. But the player almost always occupies the chief executive seat. Yeah. They're not just executing strategy, they're shaping the entire strategic direction, often to the point where they don't leave easily. Never without a fight, usually.
Right.
Or if they do genuinely retire, they often make sure to install a protege, someone to continue their legacy. So in a way, they remain the player even in retirement, by proxy.
What's really fascinating there is how these underlying principles, strategy, loyalty, unwavering execution, they seem so consistent, regardless of the context.
Yes.
And whether it's a cartel leader or a corporate CEO, the fundamental dynamics of being the player seem, strikingly similar.
Precisely. It's about understanding these universal levers of power and influence.
All right, so you've got your strategy, you've built your network, cultivated your loyalists. But when does it all come together? When is the explosion, as the text calls it? It brings in that powerful quote from Ted Levitt. Innovation, the vital spark of all human change, improvement, and progress. This explosion, it's that sudden catalytic moment where everything just changes.
And the material breaks that down into two critical elements: timing and chance. Timing is about your readiness. Are you prepared? Are your systems in place? Chance. Well, chance is about recognizing and, crucially, riding the wave of opportunity when it appears, not just noticing it pass by.
And that's where the arrow and bullseye analogy comes in, right? It illustrates that beautifully. Can you elaborate on that? What does it mean to be perfectly perpendicular to the bullseye in a real-world sense? Is it just luck?
It's definitely more than just luck. Imagine, say, 10 of you, all skilled archers, arrows drawn, ready. It might only take a very slight, maybe fleeting opportunity for you specifically to be positioned perfectly aligned with that bullseye. If the whistle blows, metaphorically speaking, at that precise instant, your arrow doesn't just hit the center, it sinks in the deepest. It means your preparation has perfectly converged with that exact, maybe fleeting moment of opportunity.
So what does this all mean for us, practically speaking?
Well, it's about that collision, isn't it? Preparation and chance colliding, and that collision catalyzing an agenda, pushing it to epic scales.
So you can't just have a plan.
No, the timing has to be perfect, and your readiness, your preparation, has to position you to take advantage of whatever discoveries might be waiting on the other side once you make that decisive move.
How do we even prepare for discoveries? That sounds almost abstract.
It's about building a really robust internal framework. Things like continuous learning, acquiring diverse skills, maybe scenario planning, having a flexible mindset. It means you're not just ready for the expected, but you're adaptable enough to pivot, to exploit unforeseen advantages that might emerge from a new situation.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's why that kind of elevator speech readiness is so critical.
Right. Always be closing, or at least always be pitching.
Something like that.
You might get that lucky break. A trusted colleague puts in a good word at the club. Suddenly you're in front of a director without even formally applying.
Exactly.
You have to be ready right then and there to seize it. Articulate your vision. Otherwise, you blow your chance. It's not always about creating the opportunity, but being fully primed to leverage it when it appears.
Precisely. And the material then dives into this really compelling historical example. Political maneuvering that led to Tony Blair becoming Britain's youngest prime minister. It's a masterclass, really, in how chance and strategy can intertwine.
Okay, set the scene for us there. John Major had just pushed out Margaret Thatcher, right?
In this unbelievable coup, the text calls it a classical drama of power play, a chess game played on a board rigged with landmines, which is quite the image.
It is.
Major, who was Thatcher's protege, seemed almost too young to challenge her, but he did.
And apparently her hurt was really visible. His remorse seemed apparent too, but the moment she left the room, boom, he called a general election to solidify his power. Ruthless. Brilliant, maybe?
Ruthless and brilliant, yes. And against this backdrop, Tony Blair began his calculated ascent. He didn't directly challenge the established labor leaders like Neil Kinnock or John Smith. Not initially.
What did he do instead?
Instead, he started by essentially modernizing the Labor Party's appeal, making it more attractive to a broader range of voters. He used what's often called third-way psychology, basically blending traditional labor values with more market-friendly, centrist policy.
Oh, broadening the base.
Exactly. Making the party palatable to a wider electorate. He had this transforming vision for his party, and importantly, he cultivated a strong, loyal following around that vision.
And then came the chance element.
John Smith, the labor leader, died suddenly. This gave Blair, being younger and representing this new labor, a distinct edge. The upcoming election looked like a likely win for Labor anyway. Neil Kinnock, a loyal party veteran, understandably believed he deserved the leadership.
But the party went with Blair.
But the party made a different choice. And it wasn't just about Blair's readiness or Smith's unfortunate death. It was also about a confluence of other factors.
Like what?
Well, if you connect this to the bigger picture, the text suggests the party chose Blair partly due to a growing trend, a trend towards younger leaders. There was even this sort of quasi-scientific theory gaining traction around then, suggesting optimal leadership age was around 40.
Interesting. So it wasn't just politics.
No, this trend wasn't isolated. It was influencing other fields too, like banking and academia. Younger, dynamic leaders were increasingly seen as the future across the board.
That's a really powerful point about these wider trends, and it leads us right into what the text highlights next. Strategic timelines and age benchmarks, like that rule of 40 you mentioned. So how does this broader trend manifest as a more concrete timeline in different industries?
It's a compelling observation the text makes. It notes how this rule of 40, while not rigid, seemed to influence success across various sectors. For instance, heads of departments and prominent universities, CEOs of major banks, often they secured those key positions right around the 40-year mark.
Okay.
It represents a sort of recognized window of peak influence and opportunity in many fields.
I want to dig into that a bit. Calculated strategies, clever political maneuvering, that sounds complex. Beyond just, say, aiming at 35, what are some specific, maybe less obvious strategies the text points to? Things you need to do in those earlier years to actually hit that benchmark?
That's an excellent question. The text implicitly suggests a couple of key areas. First, something like cross-functional mastery. Meaning, don't just stay siloed in your narrow specialty. Proactively seek experience, real experience, across different departments or functions, areas that will be critical later for a senior role. This builds a much more holistic understanding of the organization or the field, and frankly, makes you more indispensable.
Okay, cross-functional experience. What else?
Second, strategic mentorship, and crucially, sponsorship. It's not just about having a mentor give you advice. It's about identifying and cultivating a relationship with a sponsor, someone senior, influential, who will actively advocate for you, open doors for you, champion your progression when opportunities arise.
So it's proactive, not just waiting for it to happen.
Absolutely not. These aren't usually coincidences. They require calculated strategy and, yes, sometimes deft political posturing.
So understanding these unwritten timelines is vital. Like for ambitious academics, the text suggests a path. Maybe graduate college at 20, PhD by 30. Then they're often kind of expected to be a department chair by 40. Ready to step into the political world of university governance, shaping policies, budgets, faculty decisions, or maybe even influence national policy?
Exactly. These aren't random milestones. They often reflect an industry's implicit career trajectory for someone aiming to be the player. And it raises that important question for you, the listener. How does your industry measure progress? What's its peak timing? Are you aware of its unwritten rule of 40 or whatever the equivalent might be?
Yeah, that's a critical self-assessment. And it brings us right back to Mark Zuckerberg. His strategic sacrifice, leaving Harvard, he knew, didn't he? The timing for Facebook's launch had to be just right. That window of opportunity was opening and he had to jump through it.
Right. And the principle the text draws here is pretty stark. If the going rate is 40 in your industry, your arrow should already be aimed at 35. You need to be ahead of the curve.
And it adds a tough dose of reality, too.
It does. It offers this stark but maybe practical observation. If that career trajectory isn't quite hitting its intended mark by, say, age 42, that might be a strategic moment, a time to reevaluate your path, perhaps pivot, or consider alternative, may equally impactful plans. It's about realistic self-assessment and strategic agility.
Zuckerberg himself is presented as a prime example of someone who designed the end goal from the very beginning, isn't he?
Yes, at 33, he was the 5th richest person in the world. The text argues his strategy was clear from the outset. He knew he'd invented something potentially world-changing, and crucially, he understood which rules needed breaking like leaving school, and which rules absolutely needed obeying like filing patents meticulously.
So it wasn't just recklessness, it was a calculated risk.
A very calculated risk. And his story also underscores the critical importance of collaboration and support systems. The text mentions his collaborators, his then girlfriend, now wife, staying in college as part of the sort of overall scheme, plus crucial family support.
Right. It wasn't just him alone in a room.
Not at all. He methodically conquered all the necessary terrains, securing the money, the technical skill, the marketing, the management. He navigated the politics, right, as the text puts it, going from country to country and from the boardroom to boardroom. He really mastered every dimension required for that scale of success.
And his story, even his ongoing story, brings up this idea of relevance for longevity. Even tech giants like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, eventually they had to step aside or were pushed out or left their companies, sometimes for fresh blood, sometimes just to maintain relevance in the game, as the text suggests.
It's true.
It's not just about that initial achievement, it's about continued relevance, strategic adaptability. You have to keep playing to remain the player. The game really is never ending.
It's a powerful lesson, isn't it? That even the most dominant players must constantly evolve or eventually make way for others. The landscape always shifts.
That continuous struggle brings us to another warning sign from the text. Invisible players abound at every turn. You're never operating in a vacuum, are you?
Never. Think about the 2016 U.S. presidential election example it uses. Carly Fiorina tried what it calls a Ronald Reagan-style surprise punch, a strong debate performance aimed at disrupting the field.
I remember that.
But chance, or maybe the underlying dynamics, worked against her and ultimately for Donald Trump in that instance, cementing his position. She was definitely a player, but he emerged as the player in that specific moment, in that arena.
Or the text uses the intern scenario too, like in a big global law firm.
Right. Even as an intern, the competition for eventually becoming a partner starts now. You have to be on edge, it says, ready to hook into any opportunity.
Yeah.
And it uses that powerful metaphor. Not all landmines are active, though they all look deadly, and must be handled with equal dignity until neutralized.
Handled with equal dignity. I like that phrase. What does that mean, practically? Does it mean addressing potential conflicts proactively, even small ones? Maybe by gathering info, building alliances, demonstrating competence, rather than just ignoring them, or worse, escalating.
Yeah, exactly that. It's about strategic diplomacy, you could say, with competitors, with challenging stakeholders, recognizing their potential impact, however small it seems, and disarming them carefully, respectfully if possible. You're constantly assessing threats, not just outright opposition, but subtle rivalries, unexpected shifts in the landscape, potential roadblocks down the line, constant vigilance.
And that explosion we talked about earlier, the big breakthrough.
Yeah.
The text clarifies it's rarely just one big bang. It's usually a series of blasts.
Cumulative effect.
Right. To head a major bank, for example, it says you must be ready to crack through concrete, meaning you need to prepare for monumental challenges, not just incremental steps.
And you need to acquire the right ammunition and arsenals, tools relevant to the current battlefront, as it puts it.
So for a bank exec today, ammunition. That's not just financial know-how anymore, is it?
Probably not exclusively, no. It could be a deep understanding of blockchain, or AI's impact on finance, maybe a strong network with regulators in emerging markets.
Yeah.
These become your critical tools, your arsenal for the specific challenges of today's financial world, not yesterday's.
And the kicker is?
The kicker is, as your visibility increases, so does the opposition. You're never the only one with a strategy.
Right.
Other players will try to pull you down. So you must always reserve some arsenal, some strategic capacity, specifically for dealing with them.
So the landmines, they never actually leave the boardroom.
They never leave.
Yeah.
The game is always in play, the text concludes on this point. No recess.
No recess. Huh. That paints a rather stark picture, doesn't it?
It does.
It suggests being the player isn't just about achieving success, but about this constant state of strategic vigilance, readiness for ongoing engagement. It's a continuous dynamic process, not a destination.
It really is. It emphasizes that to remain the player, you have to consistently adapt, strategize, and execute, always against an ever-changing competitive landscape.
Yeah.
There really is no finish line, just continuous play.
Well, this deep dive has certainly illuminated that critical distinction between merely being a player and truly becoming the player. It really is about that unique blend, isn't it? Astute strategy, yes, but also that perfect timing and the relentless readiness to actually seize opportunity. That's what seems to drive extraordinary success, whether you're, building an empire, leading a country, or maybe just climbing the corporate ladder.
Absolutely. And maybe building on that, here's a final thought to consider. The player is always in the game. So how do these principles we've talked about, anticipation, calculated risk, constant readiness, how do they apply not just to those high-stakes arenas, but maybe to your everyday career, your personal ambitions? What landmines, perhaps metaphorical ones, are you recognizing and maybe needing to handle with dignity right now? And what ammunition, what skills, what networks, what knowledge are you acquiring for your next strategic blast? Something to think about, perhaps, as you navigate your own journey. Maybe seeking out those strategic partnerships or acquiring that crucial skill that positions you perfectly for the next big opportunity when it arises.